He promised her this beautiful life together, that they could run away and build this wonderful dream together, have this family, and everything would be perfect. My father, he was charming and he was very charismatic, but he was also terrifying to anyone that knew him.
Deceiving light. You don't tell me what to do.
Some of the messages that I heard were just completely bone-chilling to me.
I watched him hurt my mother. I watched him beat her.
This isn't just a bad person. This is an evil person.
The next time you lie to the cops, you're going to suffer the consequences.
It's shooting over here. We're at in our apartment.
My mother was very friendly, very bright. I mean, everyone smiled whenever she was around. She had a lot of friends. It was very easy for her to make friends. She could talk to just about anybody.
My mom was always very energetic. She was beautiful. She had an amazing personality. She just had a way of talking to you and making you feel very special.
My mother was adopted at birth, and she grew up in a home in Thornton, Colorado. And my grandparents, they fell in love with her. Even as a baby, she smiled, the biggest smiles. And I've got so many photographs of her. She was a very happy baby. In high school, she was very active. She liked to play sports, tennis, volleyball.
So I am Cheryl's younger cousin. I'm about 1.5 years younger than her. As a teenager, we became very close friends. We would talk about school and we'd talk about boys. She was just always very full of life, just fun to be around. I loved being around her.
She definitely didn't have trouble attracting guys. Guys were always attracted to her for her beauty. She had a very unique look. Not a lot of people were definitely drawn to it.
She met my father in high school.
Obviously, her being just 16, there was a concern there of the age gap and maybe the influence that he had on the choices that she was making. I think my aunt and uncle were maybe torn because he presented himself very well, was very polite and made very good conversation. And so I think in a way that impressed them.
My father had portrayed himself as he was a little bit more stable, I guess, than other guys. He kind of portrayed this kind of bad boy vibe, and my mom was attracted to it.
I remember very distinctly the opportunity to meet him for the first time. She brought him to the house and he pulled up in the front of the house in a really nice car. He got out very handsome, just a beautiful looking man, dressed really nice. I kind of came from a rural setting where the boys never dressed like that. And so I was like, oh, something I would have seen in a movie. She became very consumed with her relationship with him. And often when I would try to call, this is before cell phones. So if I tried to call the house, my aunt or uncle would say, oh, she's not here. She's with Tom. I just remember very distinctly her infatuation with him.
Everyone thought the world of him. They thought he was so charming and so kind and so sweet. And I know my grandmother thought he was a good person. She thought he was a good man and thought that he treated my mother well. And at some point, he convinced her to run away with him.
They made the decision together to move to California. She didn't share a lot of details other than she was very excited about it.
I think he promised her a life and a family. My mother, she always wanted kids. She loved children. And I think he promised her this beautiful life together, that they could run away and build this wonderful dream together. They could have this life, have this family, and everything would be perfect.
There was a little bit of a ripple effect of shock because none of us knew. I remember that I felt very betrayed and I felt very hurt. And I remember going, what just happened? Like, how did this girl that was a very much an active part of our life, I would consider her one of my best friends. How did we go from that and these weekly conversations and this time well spent to not even knowing about her wedding and not even being invited to her wedding? I was very saddened that she had chose to run away and leave the family and leave school and leave her sports and leave us.
The hard truth is that they struggled in California. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way he had sold it to my mother.
They had some problems in California. My father, he had gotten in trouble with an apartment complex. From what my grandmother tells me, my father would poke holes into walls and he would peep. He would watch people. But he was doing things that he shouldn't, and none of us really understood what that meant. It just appeared as though they were running away from whatever it was he got himself into. They came back to Colorado and they bought the house that me and my brother grew up in. I wish I could ask my mother what she thought or felt, but maybe she thought that if we have a baby, it'll change. Maybe everything will be okay. She found out she was pregnant with me, and I think she began looking for more support from her own family.
When Cheryl became pregnant with Shelby, a spark came back to her, and she was very excited about the prospects of being a mom. And then, of course, when Shelby arrived, then a few years later, Sean comes, and she was just so full of love and joy.
Having two children and having this family, I think it began to shift her focus, and I think that's when things started to change.
My mom's world stopped revolving around him, and that it started revolving around us, and that she was prioritizing us over prioritizing him. He liked to be the center of attention. He's just kind of like a narcissist that way and only ever thought about himself. Coming back to Denver was kind of the beginning of the end. They just started experiencing a lot more problems, and my dad started to become more aggressive. He would yell, he would throw things, he would break things. And it scared her, it scared us.
I have a lot of memories from being a child and living in that house with my mother and my father. You know, I remember him reading me books, but I also remember him screaming and throwing things. And I remember my mother crying, and I remember just being terrified.
I began to notice a change in Cheryl. Something was just a little off. Her luster for life was very much diminished. It just seemed, when you were around them, it seemed very tumultuous and a lot of anxiety and nervousness.
There were times where he would start shouting, and him and my mother, they would argue in their bedroom. And I could see through the door, the crack in the door, I could see him yelling and screaming at her, and I'd see him hit her. I think she began to realize that maybe my father was not the man that she thought he was. He was not the person that she thought he was, and I think she knew that he was a danger to me and my brother. My father, he was charming and he was very charismatic. He was intelligent. He was good looking. He was easy to talk to. He was normal. But he was also terrifying to anyone that knew him. For my father, it was always about power and control. That's all it was ever about. He told me if I spoke or if I told anyone or talked about anything, he would hurt them.
I remember him making comments about Cheryl's looks, negative comments about her looks, and negative comments about her being a mother. I remember being pretty angry at the way he was treating her. She was always on alert, and she was always very concerned about what he was going to do to her or to her kids.
They were pretty broke. He struggled to maintain a job. He was just stuck, and he was stuck not being the priority. He was stuck having no power, no control, and of us coming first. When the emotional abuse, the yelling, breaking things wasn't effective anymore, he escalated in his behavior, get more physical.
I watched him hurt my mother. I watched him beat her, and he would scream at her. He would throw beer bottles.
When he started getting physical, she would have a bunch of bruises on her. And that sounded the alarm for a lot of people, and thought the best way to go is just call law enforcement and have them deal with it.
When somebody calls to report a crime of domestic violence, they're obviously looking for help. In Cheryl's case, making the call to the Thornton Police Department at least initiated the start of a police response, the start of victim services, and the start of her journey through the court system. Kim was a victim's advocate, and they're a part of the detective division. They're a resource for the family, the victim's family, or the victim.
The first time I met Cheryl, she had reported to the Thornton Police Department that Tom had assaulted her. She would describe how he would grab her when she would try to leave the room. He would hit her. There was sexual abuse where it was like male privilege that she was going to have sex with him. And that was an experience that I believe that she had often. I think the scariest piece for Cheryl was her two children, Sean and Shelby. She was very fearful of Tom and his reactions.
He would get very angry. He would threaten to hurt us, or he would threaten to hurt my mother. Fear was what he used. He knew how to make people afraid.
Tom's abuse continued to get worse and worse. The more she stepped away and set those boundaries, the more aggressive, he got. She began to see the need to protect the kids even more.
I remember him throwing things against the wall, and I remember just being terrified. My mother was a very strong woman, very, very strong. She was strong for me and my brother, and she always kept it together. She did her best to shield us from what was happening.
When she saw that Tom wasn't treating us right, I think it broke her heart. She was okay with him treating her like crap, but she wasn't okay with him treating her children like crap. And I think that was a huge push to leave him.
My mother reached out to the police department many times. She filed restraining orders, protective orders. Kim was helping my mother through all of these issues with my father.
She got a protection order as she gained more courage and was leaving the relationship.
She realized that, if she stayed with him, that she was going to end up dead, and that we were going to end up dead.
I remember the day that we left, there were 2 suitcases in my closet, one for me, one for my brother. Well, my father, he told me to go get him a beer. I gave him the beer. And my mother, she told me to grab my brother, grab my suitcase, and get in the car. And that's exactly what I did. And as we're driving, pulling out of the driveway, my father comes out in a towel, and he is screaming and yelling, and he throws the beer bottle. She was brave and she was strong, and it took so much courage for her to make that decision to leave, because leaving those relationships is dangerous, and it can kill you.
I appreciate Cheryl's bravery so much. If someone is living in that situation with a manipulative, narcissistic, abusive person, by all means, get out.
I think one of the really positive things about Cheryl leaving the relationship was it really empowered her to be able to make her own decisions. As Cheryl began to leave that relationship, he was financially taking things away from her, not giving her, money to buy food, to buy clothes. Domestic violence is all about power and control and manipulation. She had to work more because he was not providing her the money that he said he was. He wasn't paying the bills. He wasn't doing the things that he needed to do.
My mother worked as a waitress. She worked a lot of hours. And my grandparents would help with me and my brother.
A lot of the time she was working 2 or 3 jobs just so we'd have a roof over our head and we'd have food and heat, and she would drop the world for us and she would always put us first. She would do whatever she had to.
Because he still had visitation rights, she could potentially be harmed or could potentially have to deal with his anger and his wrath.
I do know that she felt very empowered that she was able to get out, but I also think that that was the moment that it was real. She knew at that point that things were going to get worse.
You're standing there in the doorway of the home I bought with my back and my credit is seething like.
Cheryl cared for those children deeply, and she worried about them, and she worried about leaving them with him.
Like, we never wanted to leave our mom's house. We never wanted to go over and go see our father because we were afraid of him.
So the weekends we would spend over at his house. There was one time where I got very upset. I got in a fight with my brother, and it was your typical sibling bickering. But my father, he had a very short temper. He shoved me into the linen closet in his bedroom. He locked the door. I don't know how long I was in there, but it was dark when I went in. It was light when I came out. I know I had peed myself at least once. He would come by, he'd knock on the door, he'd yell. It was dark. I didn't know when I was getting out. I didn't know why I was in there. I didn't know what was happening.
It's always scary when he lost control. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed causing people pain.
Me and my brother both had parakeets, one blue, one yellow. Mine got sick, and I spent all day trying to nurse it back to health. I remember at the end of the day, I told him, "Dad, my bird's still sick. My bird is still sick. What do I do?" He grabbed my bird, and he squeezed it so hard the eyes popped out of its head.
And it wasn't enough for him to kill the bird in front of us. He made my sister cook the bird, and I had to eat it. And he thought it was funny. Like, whatever part of him he was missing, he felt complete by terrorizing us.
He was a monster. He had evil intent at every turn. I think his behavior just continued to escalate. Tom was not only manipulative, but he would watch her.
He would stand outside of that restraining order limit, and he would stand there and watch her just to let her know that he was watching her.
Cheryl, this is Tom. Don't ever presume to tell me where I'm supposed to be. There is no 100 yards. I'm on a public street, on a public sidewalk. You don't tell me what to do.
Some of the messages that I heard were just completely bone-chilling to me.
You don't tell me where to be. The next time you lie to the cops like you have before, you're going to suffer the consequences.
My father, he was losing sense of control over my mother because she began building a life for herself. She cut ties from her abuser. She filed for divorce, and she became independent. So they were divorced, and he had a girlfriend. He was seeing Sue Beamer.
It was troubling. The first time I ever saw Sue, there was like some sort of resemblance to Cheryl in their stature. It was like replacing Cheryl in the relationship that he was in. So I definitely do not think that Tom was moving on. Tom manipulated Sue. I think Tom truly manipulated everyone that he ever came in contact with.
My mother didn't do a whole lot of dating. She took care of us. That was her world until she met Ross.
With Cheryl, everything was on the table. The first day we were together, she told me that she had 2 kids, and that was certainly the center of her life. She also told me she had a psycho stalker husband, and, if I was going to run, I should run now. She was fun. She was very outgoing. She was a joy to be with, and it wasn't just me who noticed that. Everyone noticed what a joy Cheryl was.
Ross and my mother, they fell in love. He treated her so well. He was good to her.
The very first time I met her, I gave her a key to my place. This was before we were even dating. I just said, "You're someone who needs a safe place to go. Here's a key to my place. Use it whenever you want."
She was getting her life together. She was working 2 jobs. She was going to school to be an accountant. She was fixing the house so her and Ross could move and start a new life.
Our lives became intertwined to the point where life without her was something that was no longer something I could imagine. We planned our future together because our present was together, and our present was so wonderful.
Tom became aware that she was about to move on without him, and she was going to take me and my brother with her. We were about to have a completely different life separate of him, and he couldn't stand it.
Tom's abuse continued to get worse and worse the stronger that Cheryl got. The more she stepped away and set those boundaries, the more aggressive he got. Once the perpetrator starts seeing that victim get stronger and stronger, the crazier and the more volatile that person becomes.
My guess is that this was kind of the tipping point for him, knowing that she was with somebody who probably loved and adored her and treated her the way she deserved to be treated, probably just threw him into a downward spiral of evil.
He made blueberry pancakes and scrambled eggs. About an hour later, my head was foggy. Everything was spinning. At the time, I had no idea what was happening to me or why. So Tom gets on the phone. He calls my mother and convinces her that she needs to come pick me up because I am sick. I'm crying, and he puts me on the phone with my mother, and I'm begging her to come get me. So we get off the phone, and Tom takes me and my brother, and we go in the car and we go for a drive. We ended up in a bar, and Tom got a phone call, and it was Sue. Tom got very angry. He was throwing his hands. He was yelling. He was angry. And he said, "I have to go do something. I'll be back."
They had been exchanging the children at the police station, but hearing her daughter crying and saying she was sick, she let her guard down and actually went to Tom's to get Shelby.
I know one of the things that Cheryl and I talked about was that she should never, ever go to his house.
She was fearful of Tom, and so obviously the child exchanges taking place at the police department was basically for her safety.
She got the call about Shelby being sick, and then Cheryl went over there. Cheryl went up to the apartment. When she was let into the apartment, Sue was there. Sue kind of looked like maybe you really shouldn't be here.
911? There's shooting over here. Where's the guy that shot her at? It was me. It was you that shot her? Yes, because she attacked me. There's shooting over here. Where at? In our apartment. Who's been shot? I think it was my boyfriend's ex-wife.
The 911 call comes into the Thornton Police Department, and that initiated the patrol response.
My boyfriend's ex-wife came in here and started yelling at me and screaming and grabbed a knife. Why did you shoot her? She came at me with a knife.
Susan, she made the 911 call. She was still on the phone with the dispatcher when the officers arrived. Other officers went into the apartment, found Cheryl's body, tried to administer life support with the assistance of paramedics, but she was obviously deceased. All we knew is that she had multiple gunshot wounds. We find multiple shell casings. Our CSI investigator was able to determine that Cheryl is running through the hallway where she shot twice in the back, and then she receives 2 more gunshot wounds, one to her upper chest and one to her thigh, and then there's a final gunshot wound which is in her head. The pathologist would tell us that the gunshot wound to the head could not have occurred as the first wound. Tom arrived at the scene with Sean and Shelby around 9 p.m.-ish. When Tom shows up, there's still a large police presence, police outside his door.
I had never seen so many red and blue lights in my life. There was a fire truck, there was an ambulance, there were cops everywhere. And we got stopped by an officer, and he explained that my mother was shot and Susan was in the apartment.
Tom never asked what was going on. When he was asked, what does he know about what's going on, he refused to answer any questions.
Tom showed absolutely no concern. None. There was no expression, no concern for who had been shot, why, if Susan was okay, if my mother was okay. There was no concern for anyone. Me and my brother were taken to the police station. The officers, they tried to make us comfortable. They gave us water and crayons and a notepad. I drew pictures on that notepad that I still have to this day. I wrote that I missed my mother. I think I knew what had happened, I just couldn't comprehend it.
It was difficult to contemplate or realize what had happened. You don't really understand life and death as a child.
I went into the police department, got briefed about what had happened, and then I'd realized that Shelby and Sean were there.
Kim told us that my mother was dead. Overnight, my entire life had been turned upside down.
My whole world kind of crashed in. It's a call that no one ever wants to hear. It was a shock. It knocked me down.
I felt like I saw Shelby kind of suddenly take on like a new role with her brother. It was almost like she had to take on the role of Cheryl and be a protector.
I believe it was about midnight before I interviewed Susan. Susan stated that Cheryl came over, said that I wasn't the mother of the children, and I'll never be the mother. She pulled out a knife, and so I shot her. We obviously had a homicide. We had somebody who was confessing to it, and we had some physical evidence that showed that that person committed it. So that night, Susan Beamer was arrested and transported to jail on murder charges. I think there was always the sense that there was some involvement with Tom. It was just a matter of how much or, what role. We did talk to a neighbor. She saw Tom driving away in a hurry around 6 o'clock out of the apartment complex. Tom shows up at the police department and walks into the lobby. He said that I'm here for a child custody exchange. I want proof that I was here at the police department from 6 p.m. to 6:30. And the desk officer saw him arrive. I want to say it was around 6:20, 6:25. And so the officer would only write the time that he saw Tom there. He wrote on the card 6:30. So we thought Tom was trying to account for more time at the police department than he was actually there. What we knew about Tom certainly made him a person of interest. So Tom was brought in to the police department. That night, we did photographs of him. Tom didn't make any statements at the apartment. Tom didn't make any statements at the police department. So we certainly didn't have enough probable cause or any probable cause at that point to believe that he had any involvement in this. I don't think anyone was happy about letting Tom leave with no charges that evening, but legally, we had no choice.
I missed my mother. I couldn't understand that she was dead. I didn't talk about it. I didn't say anything until one day I did.
August of 98 is when Shelby provided her interview, saying that she heard Tom and Susan talk, changed the investigation.
She was blown away. I mean, she just could not believe the words coming out of my mouth.
Well, I heard my dad get up, so I went out to investigate.
Okay.
And I heard my dad say, "Here, take this gun."
The night before she died, I was at Tom's apartment. And me and my brother, we were both sleeping. I remember Tom got out of bed.
Well, I heard my dad get up, so I went out to investigate.
Okay.
He had a gun in his hand. There was a little back and forth between the two of them.
And I heard my daddy say, "Here, take this gun and kill Cheryl."
Sue took the gun, and he told her he wanted to kill my mother, and the way he explained it to her is that they could get my mother out of the way and they could be together.
It was me. It was you that shot her? Yes, because she attacked me. Why did you shoot her? She came at me with a knife.
The information we had from the 911 call and what the officers observed in the apartment didn't really match up. Susan didn't have any injuries. So self-defense obviously became questionable.
Of course, I thought it was Tom. They said it was actually Tom's girlfriend, which never made any sense to me.
By December of 98, Susan had now been in jail 4 to 5 months. With the permission and cooperation of her attorney, she wished to provide a statement. Her first statement is that there was no plan, but it was actually Tom who shot Cheryl. And right after Tom had shot and murdered Cheryl, hands her the gun and says, claim you did it, and if you don't, I'll kill your kids. I mean, she went from, I did it in self-defense, Tom wasn't even here, to now, well, Tom did it, but I had no idea this was going to happen. That makes a little more sense, but it still doesn't make a lot of sense. Susan made her second statement. She finally came clean. Her part in this was that she was to keep Cheryl in the apartment until Tom got there.
He took the clothes off that he had, and the kids were actually down in the car, just sitting in the car waiting for their dad to come back.
When Tom came in, he was wearing a different shirt. He had black gloves on. And that's when Cheryl saw Tom and began to run down the hallway. And then the next thing Susan says is that she hears gunshots, Cheryl landing in the back room, and then more series of gunshots, which matches up with where the shell casings were found, at least. That makes more sense. She was then willing to testify against Tom.
As far as Susan Beamer goes, she made the plan with my father to kill my mother. They made the plan to take my mother's life.
August of '98, complete unrelated allegation against Tom had been reported to the Thornton Police Department, not for the homicide, but for a sexual assault on a child. It was fortunate for us that he was arrested and incarcerated, so we knew where to find him. We served the arrest warrant while he was incarcerated. With most jury trials, it's very tense. I would say this was a little more than most. It was just, you could just feel the tension during each day of trial.
We certainly hope there would be some justice. You know, the person responsible would be held accountable.
The prosecutor lays out the case in a pretty chronological order. Susan does testify against Tom.
I remember the day that Shelby testified in court. She was such a little trooper. And to have to sit there and talk about that day, the day that her mom died, in front of her dad, who was, you know, just a short distance away, she was just so brave.
I remember being on the stand, and his lawyer approached me. His lawyer began by saying, "Can you tell me the difference between the truth and a lie?" And I told him one was real, the other was not. And I remember looking at my father in that orange jumpsuit.
I think as we began to get into the trial and really kind of unpack all of the years of abuse, I think it really shined a light that Cheryl was an incredibly strong person.
I do recall some phone messages that Cheryl had received, some kind of veiled threats. We knew who he was threatening and what he was threatening.
You and your boyfriend, your dad and your brother are cowards. I'm a man. I can tear them apart.
When the guilty verdict was announced, the judge gave immediate sentencing.
I was very relieved. I was very happy that finally this man who deserved no freedom, that he was put away for life.
I remember as we were walking out of the courtroom, Tom jumped up and he started yelling at Shelby.
What he actually said was, "I love you." And he was trying to convince me that he didn't do it and that it was all a lie. I remember having nightmares about that as a child. Just the look in his eyes and the anger. His hands were clenched. It took 4 officers to hold him back.
This isn't just a bad person. This is an evil person. It's a level of evil that, I would hope most people never see in their lifetime.
I think if you define evil, I would say Tom Rogers fits that definition.
I think Tom being convicted obviously was a win, but it was just one chapter in a lifetime of healing for those children.
He was not free to hurt anyone. He was not free to do as he pleased. I did find solace in it, and I, to this day, believe that he's exactly where he belongs.
I look back now and think about the time I was with her as being a gift. I wish I'd had more time, but I am thankful for the time I did have.
I put together a scrapbook with a bunch of pictures of my mother and me and my brother, and we still have that book to this day.
She would give everything for her family. I thank her every day, and I love her, and I always remember her with a smile on her face.
I remember her as being a strong, independent woman. I remember her as being a brave woman, and she taught me how to be brave. She never stopped fighting, and that's how I want to remember her. She was my hero.
All right, guys, thank you very much for coming today. I have called you for a very special thing. We have an event day after tomorrow, and Khushi, you will make the necessary arrangements. Khushi,
Yeah, sure, sir.
you seem a bit off today.
Everything is good, sir. Don't worry, I will do.
All right, I am counting on you. All the very best.
ਕੱਲ ਰਾਤੀ ਰੋਈਆਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਏ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਰੋਇਆ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਚ ਲੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੁੰਡਿਆਂ ਚ ਅੜੇ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਖਰੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਦਿਖਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਵੇ ਨਾ 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 ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸੱਚ ਸੱਚ ਦੱਸੀ ਵੇ ਇੱਕ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਗੱਲ ਵੇ ਤੂੰ ਦਿਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖੀ ਵੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਵੇ ਤੇਰਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਵੇ ਸੁਣ ਮੇਰੀ ਸੁਣ ਲੈ ਯਾਰ ਵੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਏ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਲੜਦਾ ਏ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਸੜਦਾ ਏ ਰਾਜ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਹੋਏ ਰਾਜ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਲਾਰੇ ਲਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਵੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਦਿਨ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਏ ਤੂੰ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹਿਣਾ ਏ ਤੇਰੀ ਦੂਰੀ ਤੇ ਮਜਬੂਰੀ ਦਿਲ ਮੇਰਾ ਏ ਸਹਿੰਦਾ ਏ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਨਾ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛਦੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਦੇ ਮਨਾਉਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਰੁੱਸਦੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਏ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਸਿਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਤੂੰ ਖਾਵੇਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਾ ਸਤਾਇਆ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਜਾਨ ਨਿਕਲ ਨਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਾਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬੁਲਾਂ ਤੇ
हे गाइस, तो अभी आपने हमारा दुनिया सॉन्ग देखा, सो प्लीज कमेंट करके बताना कि आपको सॉन्ग कैसा लगा।
एंड हाँ, वीडियो को लाइक करना, जाने से पहले रिपल म्यूजिक स्टूडियोज के चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लेना। थैंक यू, बाय बाय एवरीवन।